If you're taking a picture of a landscape, setting up your camera is really quite simple. The only thing you want to keep in mind when taking pictures of landscapes is having a long depth of field to have everything in focus. So there are a couple ways of doing this. Turn your mode dial to the landscape scene mode right here. And what that does is allow you to choose between a few different landscape options. The difference, for example, between normal and nature is the color algorithms the camera is using to generate the color in the scene. With nature, there is more emphasis put on greens and blues in your picture. If you're taking a picture of a waterfall, for example, and you want to get that smooth, fluid effect, then you can choose Creative. Go ahead and press Set. And now you can use your left and right navigation buttons in order to move this slider that sets the shutter speed. Right now you can see my shutter speed is set to 1 second. It's flashing at me in red, which means the camera sees that there's way too much light in the scene for there to be a 1 second exposure. So I'm going to move over to increase the shutter speed until my shutter speed turns yellow. Now, when I press the shutter button halfway, it shows an appropriate aperture, and I know I can take this shot and it'll come out properly exposed. The only problem with the automated scenes is that ISO and white balance are automated. For the most part, it's okay. White balance set to automatic outdoors is really just fine. You will get a little bit better color, however, if you set that to daylight. So the other thing you can do instead is choose A from your mode dial. Just turn your mode dial to A. This stands for aperture. And what this allows you to do is set a custom aperture. I'll use my dial in the front to set the aperture. I'll move that up to something like f16. This will get me everything from near to far in focus. You don't necessarily have to have it all the way up to 22. Keep this on 14, 16 should be just fine. And now go ahead and press the shutter button halfway just to make sure that the shutter speed is still fast enough for me to handhold the shot. Right now it's set to 1/40th of a second, which is okay but not great. So I will change the aperture a little bit more. I'll go to f11, and now my shutter speed is 1/60th of a second, which can easily be handheld, especially considering I'm using the image stabilization mode. Now my ISO is set to 100. This is great. Again, we're outdoors, there's plenty of light, so this should not be a problem. And my white balance is set to daylight. To change either one of these settings, just press either the ISO button or the white balance button right here. For example, if this was not set to daylight, I can just press WB and use either the right or left navigation button or the dial in the front to move the selection to the appropriate white balance option. If it's cloudy, for example, I'll choose cloudy, which will help warm up the tones in the image. I'm just going to stick to daylight for now and press set to escape this function. Remember, the focus dial should be set to AFS, or autofocus single shot, which means when you press the shutter button, the camera locks focus on that target, which allows you to recompose the image and take the picture. Now, just as with every picture, I want to make sure the focus brackets are over my subject. In this case, anything that's really at a great distance, such as the horizon or a mountain in the landscape. Press the shutter button halfway. The camera will sound a double beep. The brackets will turn green, and there's a green dot in the top right corner indicating the camera has locked focus at that distance. Now you can recompose the image and press the shutter button the rest of the way to take the picture. To find out much more about digital photography and your digital camera, go to lbguides.com.